The applause echoed off the glass walls of the conference room as Ryan stepped onto the small stage, all polished confidence and rehearsed humility. He shook hands with the CEO, held the crystal trophy just right for the photographer, and then turned to face the crowd, but with that easy smile he always wore when he was lying. "I'd like to thank my team for their support," he began, voice smooth, professional. This innovation was the result of collaboration, long nights, and believing in bold ideas. He never said my name. I stood in the back, unnoticed in the shadow of one of the support pillars, arms folded loosely across my chest. The champagne in my hand had long since gone warm. A few feet away, my manager clapped dutifully, his eyes glazed with performance. No one turned to look at me. No one seemed to notice the person who'd built the algorithm from scratch, who had spent 6 months writing every line of code, optimizing every edge case, stress testing every scenario. $4.3 million. That's what my model had saved the company. Not estimated, documented. It had reduced inventory bloat, minimized shipping redundancies, and completely rewired how we handled vendor logistics. The numbers didn't lie. Ryan just took credit for them. 3 weeks earlier, I had shared the near-final prototype with him during what was supposed to be a peer review. I'd walked him through the architecture, explained the clustering model I'd used, even highlighted the fallback logic in case of data gaps. He'd asked questions. He'd nodded along. Then the next day, I was homesick with a brutal flu and missed the department sink. By the time I returned, he had presented the model to senior leadership as a collective effort spearheaded by his optimization group. I wasn't even in the room. I had tried to raise the issue quietly, first with Ryan, then with my manager. "Let it go," they'd said. "Be a team player. Credit is less important than impact." But I knew what this was. I'd seen it before, not just aimed at me, but at every woman who'd ever been told her brilliance was only valuable if someone else packaged it, especially if that someone wore a better-fitting suit and had a louder voice. So I waited. I documented everything. My GitHub commits, all time-stamped and signed. I kept the early emails, the drafts of the presentation, even the whiteboard snapshots from late nights I spent in conference room B17, developing the model line by line. I embedded metadata into the code files, logged every major version with my authorship tags. I didn't argue. I didn't whine. I built a record. And as Ryan held up the trophy like he'd actually earned it, I stepped out from the shadows and quietly walked toward the front of the room, toward Elaine Winters, our CEO. The real presentation was about to begin. Elaine Winters was mid-conversation with the VP of Product when I approached. She was tall, graceful in a way that made people lean in when she spoke. Not because she was loud, but because she never had to be. She spotted me as I reached her and offered a polite, practiced smile. "Morgan," she said. "Glad you could. Make it." "Ms. Winters," I replied, my voice calm. "I have something for you. For the company archives." I handed her a plain black folder. She raised an eyebrow slightly, then took it with both hands. It felt heavier than it was, because it held something no trophy ever could: the truth. Inside was a meticulously organized dossier, every major commit to the codebase, signed with my developer key, screenshots of Slack conversations where I outlined the architecture to Ryan, copies of internal documentation I'd authored, version histories. The crown jewel was a PDF report, a technical breakdown showing how every part of the final algorithm, down to the variable names, matched my original sandbox model. Elaine didn't open it right away. She glanced at the cover, then back at me. Not looking to stir anything up, I added. But I believe in this company's values, and I believe in giving credit where it's earned. Her smile faded, not from displeasure, but from the kind of seriousness that comes when someone realizes they've missed something important. I see, she said quietly. I know the optics, I continued. I know how this will look. That's why I waited until after the ceremony. This isn't about embarrassment. It's about integrity. She didn't respond right away, just nodded, tucked the folder under her arm and said, Thank you, Morgan. We'll review it carefully. I didn't linger. I didn't look for anyone's reaction. I simply turned and walked back through the sea of executives and engineers, sipping champagne, smiling for cameras, celebrating a win that wasn't theirs. I left early that night. No one noticed. No one asked why. But I slept better than I had in weeks. 2 days later, I received the calendar invite. Subject, Executive Floor, 10-hour a.m. Organizer, Executive Assistant to Elaine Winters. Attendees, Morgan Taylor, Elaine Winters, Dr. Harish Mehta, Head of R&D. Counsel, Internal Affairs. No explanation. No agenda. Just a location. Boardroom C, Level 41. I stared at the invite for a long moment, not from fear, but from the knowledge that something was shifting. Finally, at precisely 9:58, I stepped into the private elevator. My palms were dry, my mind clear. I had nothing to defend, and nothing to prove. I'd already done both, in silence, in code. The boardroom was sleek, quiet, and much smaller than I imagined the executive floor to be. Elaine sat at the head of the table, flipping through the folder I had given her. The contents were now neatly tabbed with color-coded sticky notes. Beside her sat Dr. Mehta, a brilliant, if occasionally distracted man who had once told me over coffee that genius often isn't loud enough to win its own argument. To his right, a woman I recognized from our legal department. No one was smiling. Morgan, Elaine said, gesturing for me to sit. Thank you for coming. I nodded and sat down, spine straight, hands folded in my lap. I want to start, she continued, by saying how grateful we are for your work, your clarity, and your restraint. Dr. Mehta leaned forward. We've reviewed everything. The code logs, your notes, metadata, even the early versions. There's no question who built the foundation of the optimization model. I exhaled slowly, quietly. Elaine continued. It shouldn't have taken documentation to prove what should have been obvious, and that's on us. They didn't mention Ryan. They didn't have to. The council slid a document across the table. A formal letter, already signed. We'd like to offer you the lead role on our next-generation AI innovation team. It's a new division. Launching. Quan. Full budget authority, hiring power, salary adjustment, and an equity package. I blinked once. This isn't just a promotion, Elaine added. It's an acknowledgement and an invitation. We want you to help us build not just technology, but culture. A culture where this kind of thing doesn't happen again. Dr. Mehta nodded. We need attribution protocols, clear credit chains. You're the perfect person to help us design them. For a moment, I said nothing. I just looked at the letter, not because I didn't believe it, but because I had stopped expecting justice to look like this. I accept, I said finally, my voice steady. Elaine smiled, but not warmly, respectfully. Good. We'll make the announcement internally by Friday. As I stood to leave, Dr. Mehta looked up at me. You didn't yell, he said. You didn't threaten. You just documented everything. I nodded. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting, if you record it right. And with that, I walked out, 1 floor higher than I'd ever been allowed before, and light years from where I started. By Friday morning, the company newsletter dropped into everyone's inbox. The lead story wasn't about Ryan. It wasn't even about the awards ceremony. It was about me. Subject line: announcing our new AI innovation lead, Morgan Taylor. The article detailed my promotion, how I'd be heading a new division focused on next-gen machine learning applications, improving operational efficiencies across global product lines. It listed my contributions to the optimization model, citing measurable outcomes: $4.3 million saved in Q3 alone. There was a professional photo, my title, a quote from Dr. Mehta about quiet brilliance and accountable systems. No mention of the controversy. No name-dropping, just facts. But anyone with a working brain knew what it meant. By lunchtime, my Slack messages were flooded. Some were genuine congratulations. From engineers I'd worked with for years, teammates who'd seen me in conference rooms until 10 p.m. Others were thinly veiled curiosity. Whoa, that was fast. Was this planned all along? Did I miss something? Last I heard, Ryan was getting the AI lead nod. Either way, well-deserved. You've always been a beast with the back-end logic. I responded to the kind ones, ignored the rest. Meanwhile, Ryan's name vanished from the company homepage's Leadership Spotlight section. His profile on the internal wiki was edited down to a generic description. The Quarterly Innovation Award? Quietly reissued, with a line that read, "Project attribution has been reviewed and updated for accuracy. We celebrate the team's efforts, with special acknowledgement to Morgan Taylor for her foundational work. No public scolding, no drama, just a correction wrapped in corporate diplomacy." That afternoon, I saw him in the break room. He didn't look angry, just empty. Like someone who couldn't quite figure out how the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. But I met his eyes, held them, and I smiled. Not out of spite, but calm, earned. Clarity. I had no intention of humiliating him. I didn't need to. He'd done that part himself. The following week, I moved into my new office. A corner space on the 38th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a direct view of the Bay Bridge. It wasn't flashy, just clean and focused, with natural light that hit the desk around 10 a.m. and stayed until nearly 4. I didn't decorate with trophies or quotes, just a whiteboard, a small orchid, and a framed print that read, "Let the work speak." The first thing I did was meet with HR and the engineering ops team to implement a new attribution protocol across the product and R&D departments. Every future project would require authorship logs, with code commit history tied to individual credentials, transparent meeting notes, archived in a shared folder, mandatory peer verification before public presentations, contribution matrices reviewed by at least one neutral party in leadership, not complicated, just fair. And not surprisingly, the pushback came immediately, not from top-level leadership, but from a handful of middle-tier managers who'd grown comfortable in the ambiguity of credit. One emailed me directly, "Morgan, this level of documentation feels excessive. We've always trusted our people to work with integrity." I replied, "So did I." That shut it down. Meanwhile, my new team began to take shape. 3 women from back-end AI, a recently hired non-binary NLP specialist who had almost left the company after their patent proposal was buried in someone else's quarterly review deck. A mid-career engineer from Brazil who had been told her English wasn't client-facing enough for a leadership role. They weren't loud, they weren't flashy, but they were brilliant, and now they had a space where no one would speak over them. I made sure of it. On our first full-team stand-up, I opened with a reminder. We are not here to prove ourselves louder than anyone. We are here to build things that work, and make sure the right people are credited for it. One of the engineers nodded slowly, her eyes shining more than she probably meant them to. No one clapped. No one needed to. We got to work. That evening I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I watched the city lights flicker on across the water, a quiet rhythm of progress and movement. Ryan had transferred to a satellite office the day before. Word was he'd requested it himself. No one asked me for details, and I gave none. 3 months later, our new AI division delivered its first official product, a dynamic forecasting model that not only adjusted for real-time supply, fluctuations, but self-corrected for vendor reliability over time. It was cleaner, faster, and more explainable than anything we'd deployed before. It was also fully credited, every contributor listed by name in the rollout presentation, with visible authorship logs embedded in the documentation. It was a small thing to some. To us, it was everything. When we presented to the executive team, Elaine Winters sat in the front row. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer performative praise. She just listened, eyes focused, head tilted slightly, as she followed each slide. When we finished, she stood and said 4 words that still echo in my head. This is the standard. Not great job, not impressive work, just, this is the standard. And that's exactly what we'd set out to create. Later that week, I received a handwritten card from Dr. Mehta. No envelope, just folded once and placed on my desk. Morgan. What you built isn't just technical. It's cultural. You didn't just launch a new model. You launched a new way forward. Keep going. Harish I kept that one, slipped it behind the orchid pot on my desk. Meanwhile, the internal changes rippled further than I expected. Other departments began requesting attribution training. Product started tagging engineers in release notes. HR quietly added a line in onboarding about credit integrity. No one said the name. Not out loud. Not in meetings. But everyone knew. This shift began with what happened between Ryan and me. He hadn't spoken to me since the day in the break room. I occasionally saw his name CC'd on peripheral projects. No scandals. No dramatic exit. Just quiet removal. Like a background process, terminated after using someone else's memory. He stayed in the shadows after that, just like I used to, until I decided to step into the light and claim the things I built, not with noise, with evidence, with poise, with impact. And now that I had the room and the mic, I was making sure no one ever had to fight the same invisible battle alone again. 6 months after that award ceremony, I found myself standing on a different stage. This time, at a national tech leadership summit in Chicago. I wasn't in the audience. I wasn't on the sidelines. I was the closing keynote. The organizers had asked me to speak on building integrity into innovation. I agreed, on one condition, that I wouldn't just talk about AI systems. I'd talk about the people who build them too. The ballroom was full. Engineers, directors, product leads, startup founders. I opened with a simple question. Who here has ever built something and watched someone else take the credit? A forest of hands went up. No names, no drama, just silence stretching across the room like truth settling in. I told the story, not with proper nouns, but with moments, the flu, the folder, the Floor 41 meeting, the quiet shift that followed. I didn't talk about revenge. I talked about documentation systems and the weight of having to prove what you already know to be yours. Then I said this: innovation without integrity is noise. Progress without attribution is theft. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't speak louder, it's record better. When I stepped off stage, a line had already formed. Young engineers, women in tech, a few quiet men who said thank you, with more in their eyes than in their words. One woman, maybe mid-20s with a badge that read Back-End Engineer, Toronto, asked me, "How did you know when to speak up?" I smiled. When the truth became heavier to hold inside than to hand over. Back at headquarters, things had changed. Not overnight, but enough. My AI division was now mentoring junior devs from underrepresented backgrounds. We created an internal tool that tracked authorship contributions automatically, clean, immutable, and visible across departments. And every new hire in engineering orientation now hears this line. Around here, we don't just build systems, we build proof. On the 1-year anniversary of that night in the conference room, I stayed late. Just me and the quiet hum of machines training overnight. I opened a private folder on my desktop named Quiet Victories. Inside were screenshots from that old GitHub thread. My first commit. The presentation slides I never got to give. A scan of the letter Elaine had handed me with my promotion offer. And the card from Dr. Mehta. I read it again, then closed the folder. I didn't need a trophy. I didn't need applause. I had the code, the record, the legacy. He took the stage. I took the system. And in the end, mine was the only architecture that couldn't be overwritten. And that's how I learned that you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to keep records. And let the facts walk themselves in. What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments. If this story made you pause, hit like and subscribe for more. And share this with someone who knows the power of quiet justice.